Well, before I read scripture today, I need to acknowledge that I am excited that today is finally here. It's been a long wait for me and my family, and I'm sure for you as well. And I thought this season taught me a lot about waiting until we went to the DMV Monday. We decided we did not want to have to make two visits, so we brought both cars. We're like, I don't know if they would need our cars present or not. I don't know if they have to look at the odometers, but we are going to get this over with. And my wife and I both drive into the parking lot, and I just see this long, long line outside. And I called my wife and I was like, hey, do you want to do this another time? And she's like, no, we're doing this right now. The kids were really excited about that. And the reward for waiting for like 20 people outside in the heat is you get to get inside waiting once again. And all of that has me thinking about that there's a lot of personality types that you meet in life, but I have yet to meet someone who loves waiting. Anybody love waiting? I think even nostalgically, when you think back about waiting for Christmas as a kid, and you might have that, like, that was such an exciting season. But if you had the choice between waiting for Christmas morning on Christmas Eve and just throwing presents open and just ripping into things, you choose the presents. There's something about waiting that is really difficult. We just want instant gratification, but the most important things in life often take time. And so this is the first of four messages following the life of Jacob. We're going to be looking for something better because we're often chasing after the next thing. And today we're going to reflect on chasing something better than just instant satisfaction. So I'm going to read today from Genesis 25. We're going to read from verse 19 to 34. The text says, "These are the descendants of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham was the father of Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean of Padan Aram, sister of Laban, the Aramean. And Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord granted his prayer, and his wife Rebekah conceived. The children struggled together within her, and she said, 'If it is to be this way, why do I live?' So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, 'Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples born of you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, the elder shall serve the younger.' And when her time to give birth was at hand, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red, all his body like a hairy mantle, and so they named him Esau. And afterward his brother came out, and his hand gripping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. And Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. And when the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man, living in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he was fond of game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Once, when Jacob was cooking a stew, Esau came in from the field, and he was famished. Esau said to Jacob, 'Let me eat some of that red stuff, for I am famished.' Therefore he was called Edom. And Jacob said, 'First, sell me your birthright.' And Esau said, 'I'm about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me?' And Jacob said, 'Swear to me first.' So he swore to him, and he sold his birthright to Jacob. And then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil soup, and he ate and he drank, and he rose and he went his way. And thus Esau despised his birthright." The word of God for the people of the world. Thanks be to God. Now, I want to start off by noting something about this story. These kinds of stories can sometimes be received differently by people. This is a story of a family in the ancient world struggling to have children, and stories about infertility or childbirth don't land the same for everyone. For some, they carry joy. For others, grief or anger, complicated memories, or just the reminders of prayers that seemed unanswered. And I want to note that faith does not require us to pretend that those experiences are simple. This family story in this text is not simple. It is complicated. It is messy. Our lives are messy. And we can bring all of that mess to God this morning. And I want to note why this kind of story was so prominent in these texts. In the ancient worldview, there's not this great, clear vision of an afterlife at this point in the story. And so for them, the living world is all that mattered. And so having your bloodline continue meant that your lineage, your land, your memory, everything had life and continued to live beyond yourself. And so these stories are wrestling with wanting to give that life on to the next generation. And we see so many stories of the struggle to have that happen in these texts. But I want to note that, yes, they get their prayers answered in this story, but I don't think they were answered the way that they expected. Even answered prayers that seem like positives can sometimes be painful. Quite literally for Rebecca, this pregnancy is not going super well. She's not happy about how she's feeling. I love that the text in the Hebrew, it's kind of an incomplete thought. She's just kind of expressing distress, and she's like, if it's to be this way, why am I here? Why do I live? What's going on? She's just so frustrated about, she's waited 20 years to have a child, and it is going miserably, in her opinion. And when she is able to have her children, she's giving birth to competitive twins. One, they don't have scans to give them a heads up. Hey, you're going to have twins. And so perhaps it's a surprise. Perhaps she hears God's message to her as she's having twins, or maybe she's thinking God's telling her she will have multiple children and that those kids will eventually be at odds with each other. But she gives birth to two boys who do not make life easy on their parents. They are, even from birth, struggling with one another. And their whole lives are a struggle. And I appreciate that the Bible is very honest with us, that this family did not have a perfect life. They did not have this perfect family childhood home. And maybe you might think, that's good because you have some resonance with that. You're like, I know what it's like to have a struggling sibling rivalry. I know what it's like to have a messy household. The Bible speaks to all situations. And I want to note that there are times that we pray about something, even for 20 years, and sometimes even when we get what we want, there's still going to be birth pains, there's still going to be little struggles. And so when we get to the story that we're focusing on today, when Esau is going to sell his birthright, I want you to imagine, I think it's easier to imagine them as teenagers because we all know what teenagers look like when they're hungry and they come home and they're ready to eat. And so Esau comes home. He's famished. He's been working. I don't know if he had a good hunting expedition or not, but he comes home hungry, and he's demanding, give me food. I don't know if he would have demanded that of Rebekah or of his dad or anybody else that happened to be around, but Jacob is the one on this occasion at home making some food, and Esau thinks that looks pretty good. He's like, you know what? I want that. And Jacob does what kids do, and he barters. Have you ever seen kids bartering with each other about what they'll exchange for a toy or for what, or getting to pick what things on the television or whatever it is? Kids rarely barter fairly because they don't understand value very well. And so it's like, hey, I'll clean my room for how long if you just give me this one snack? Now, it can be challenging to make that come through to fruition after that agreement is made. But it is common to barter with each other. What is not common is for the extremeness of Jacob's request. He doesn't ask for something simple. He asks for all of Esau's birthright. Give me your family standing. Give me your inheritance. Give me your responsibility. Give me your future for some soup. Strangely, Esau thinks this is a good trade. He is so hungry. I feel like it's a good Snickers commercial opportunity. You're not you when you're hungry. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to die anyway. Might as well enjoy some soup. What's the birthright to me? And so Jacob, I think, understands he's a little shady and he's a little bit sneaky. And he's like, you know what? I better get an oath on this. Do you mean it, Esau? Can I actually have your birthright? Because, I don't want you to later say, I was just joking, so I need you to commit to it. We would say, I want to get this in writing. They didn't write as much in that era. But Jacob doesn't really trust that Esau will mean it unless he swears an oath. And when Esau swears an oath, he eats the food and he leaves. And I want to point out that in the text, he started off seeing some red stuff. I think he thinks that there's a stew based on what the narrator says earlier in the story. And by the end, when he gets the food, he's getting bread and lentil stew. I think he got a bait and switch even involved in this. And I don't know if he even noticed because he scarfs it down so fast. Who knows if he tasted whatever he got? But he had that such an instant moment of eating, and then he has to live with the aftermath of what the text says is despising his birthright, giving it away for one bowl of soup. And when I think about this text, I think about the fact that when we become desperate for something, whether it's small or large, whether it's holy or common, we can be tempted to do either what Jacob or Esau does in this text. We can choose to exploit someone else's hunger. You're like, I've got a great business venture. There's a bunch of hungry people. How much can I charge and get away with it to get as much as I can? We can exploit others, or we can be tempted to surrender so much more just to satisfy our own immediate hunger. God's blessings, God's goodness, God's life invites us to a longer, slower faithfulness than just immediate satisfaction. I think Jacob and Esau seem like opposites in this story, but they share the same spiritual problem. Neither can tolerate their present. They are both unhappy in the moment. Jacob's unhappy with his lot in the family and his kind of future. Esau's unhappy with his hunger and his belly. And they tragically reduce their relationship into one single quick transaction. Jacob's quick fix: I can obtain the future right now. I can get the future from my brother, even if I have to exploit him to get it. I don't think we give Jacob enough grief for this. If this one still feels a little like maybe he's okay, the later story where he outright tricks his father with his mom's help will let you know a little bit of where his heart's at in the story at this point. I think about when we talk about the prodigal son story, when Jesus tells that parable, that we all get that it's quite a bit to ask your dad who's still alive for your inheritance right now. And here's Jacob negotiating like, hey, I want the birthright right now. Give it to me this moment. He's negotiating his own share of his father's inheritance, also before his father died. And he's willing to exploit his brother in his time of need. And so he's willing to obtain the future at the cost of his brother. Esau has his own quick fix. I must relieve my hunger, and so I'll do whatever I can. I'll surrender whatever I need to. And instant gratification can sometimes rob us from the enduring blessings, the enduring goodness, the enduring life that we so actually long for. You know, I sympathize with Esau because there's a reason why diets are really hard. You can have really good intentions about your long-term health, not just like what you want to look like, but like what the things you want to do in life. And you can have all of those goals. But, you know, Courtney had earlier the apple and the chocolate. Like sometimes something's in front of you that's just too hard to pass up. And it's so easy to give up on our long-term goals for some short-term satisfaction. Some early interpreters took this story as an example of like the sin of gluttony, of like it's all about appetites in the story. And so there's some early Christian commentators who will talk about Esau like they will talk about Adam and say, well, you know, Adam had everything in paradise. And you know what? They decided to eat something when they shouldn't have. But I appreciate there's a 4th century theologian, Ephraim the Syrian, who said Esau did not sell his birthright because he was hungry, but rather, since it had no value to him, he sold it for nothing as if it were nothing. For Ephraim, Esau's problem was not just that he was hungry, it was that he had lost his evaluation of what mattered in life. He lost the value of the thing that he just took for granted. And so often for us, when we get so busy with the chaos of life, we can lose sight of the things that really matter to us. And so Jacob and Esau enter into a transaction. Jacob sacrifices a relationship for the future. Esau sacrifices his future for some food. But both leave the table having lost more than they realize. Esau gets fed. Jacob gets the oath he wants. They get what they want immediately. And yet, their family starts to unravel. They lose so much in this one moment. And I think we have a lot more in common with Jacob and Esau than we would like to admit. Like Jacob, sometimes maybe we see a little power opening and we decide to make a power grab and we just want to get a little bit more control over our lives around us. Or maybe we've sacrificed something of value because, the comfort of appeasing somebody else was worth it to us. The goal of our story today is to not, notice the Jacobs of the world and then out-Jacob them. The goal is to live the way Christ would in every situation. And I wonder what Christ would have been like in this story if he had been Esau. Would Jacob's offer of, hey, if you sell me the birthright, I'll give you the food, would Jesus have retorted, man can't live by bread alone, and walked away? Or would he have just multiplied fishes and loaves and just shared them and said, hey, I can make food too? Would he have confronted Jacob through radical generosity? Sometimes he would talk about, if someone asks you for your cloak, give them all of your clothes, and that you'll kind of like embarrass, shame them by showing that they're taking everything from you. And so should Esau have said, hey, brother, here's all of my clothes. Do you want that too? What would Jesus have done? Jesus rejected the quickest paths to power. Temptation in the wilderness for him was, hey, I'll just make everybody worship you right now. We can skip the way to the cross. Wouldn't that be so much nicer? But there are no shortcuts to a faithful life. The next time you encounter disagreement, resist pleasing someone else just so that they'll feel better for a moment if it means that you're going to resent them for a month or a decade. You're like, oh, I'll just go along with it. And then you realize you've become sour in your soul because you've given away something that you weren't ready to give away. Don't give up to someone just because they're angry if it means forfeiting your values. Before you make a decision that's uncomfortable, stop and ask yourself, why am I trading away something for instant relief right now? Am I surrendering my honesty to avoid a difficult conversation? Am I surrendering my generosity because fear tells me there won't be enough? Am I surrendering a relationship because being right feels more urgent than being reconciled or having peace with one another? I think as churches, we can often be tempted as well. And we would love the Staples Easy button. Like, what's the quick fix that makes everybody 100% happy and makes 100%, will keep growing and growing? What's the easy way? What's the easy slogan for universal agreement? But the deepest blessings of church life rarely arrive quickly. Like Jesus' parable of the sower, seeds are planted, and you don't always know how quickly those seeds will grow. But when they do grow, they grow miraculously, exponentially more than you expect. And I think about, how trust builds slowly. Relationships deepen slowly. Children and teenagers mature slowly. Congregations learn to welcome their neighbors slowly. Wounds heal slowly. Shared vision emerges slowly. People learn to risk honesty with one another slowly. And as we begin this chapter together, I don't want us to settle for any quick fixes that would betray what God's love looks like or what God's love calls us to. What kind of church is God forming us to become for one another, for our neighbors, for people we haven't even met yet? What would we choose to refuse to trade away simply because the moment becomes uncomfortable? Would our values for our welcome, our integrity, our willingness to ask hard questions, our commitment to the hungry, to those who are lonely, to those who are excluded or overlooked, our belief that every single person bears the image of God, There are things that are so valuable that are not worth giving up. Our faith and our church are worth enduring labor pains so that God might bring new life in us and around us in our city. Some blessings are too important to rush.